It's a long 10 seconds.
Okay, Councillor Harris, you can start the meeting.
Okay, welcome everyone. Maybe Kristen, who's on the line? What guests do we have?
In Council Chambers?
On Zoom.
On Zoom, you have Councillor Dodge and yourself. And Councillor Garcia is joining us momentarily. We also have members of Electra online, and the rest of Council is in Chambers.
Perfect. So welcome everyone to St. Catharines Hydro Inc.'s AGM as City Council as the shareholder. First item on the agenda is call the meeting to order. And that the first item is waiver of notice of annual shareholder meeting. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Porter, perhaps? Seconded by Councillor Phillips. Be it resolved that the notice of the annual shareholder meeting be waived. And I'll look for a show of hands. All those in favor? And that's carried. Adoption of the agenda. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Be it resolved that the agenda for the June 13th, 2022 annual meeting of the shareholder be approved. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor Littleton. All those in favor? That'd be hands. I'm taking it that everybody's hands going up there. Thank you. And that's carried. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Hearing none and seeing none. Adoption of the minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the annual shareholder meeting of June 7th, 2021? A mover, please. I believe that's Councillor Townsend, seconded by Councillor McPherson. Am I correct? All those in favor? And that's carried. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the special shareholder meeting of June 7th, 2021? I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor Townsend. All those in favor? That'd be show of hands. I'm presuming everybody online is, if I don't hear anybody saying no, I'm going to presume that it's everybody's in favor, and that's carried. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the special in-camera shareholder meeting of June 7th, 2021? I need a mover. Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Phillips. All those in favor? All those in favor, and that's carried. Annual Electra update. I will now call upon Brian Bentz, President and CEO, and John Basella, Executive Vice President of Energy and Growth and CFO, to provide an update on the past year. Mr. Bentz.
Thank you, Councillor Harris and Director Harris. We have a brief presentation today that we want to walk you through that includes the updates for Electra, including industry trends, strategy 2.0, some operational updates. John Basilio will give a brief financial updates for the year-end performance for 2021. Then we'll have a brief presentation on community issues, and happy to take questions after that. With respect to industry trends, we're seeing three major trends impacting the electricity industry in general and impact our strategy and operations. And the first one is climate change. Changing climate conditions are having and will continue to have a wide-ranging impact on Electra's infrastructure, staff, and customers. We're seeing more frequent and severe storms, and that's going to require that we build more resilience into electrical systems, which were designed to handle historical climate conditions. Customer energy consumption will also shift as hotter summers, warmer winters, and changing weather patterns impact customers' energy needs. An example of this trend was the recent severe storm that swept across Ontario on May 21st. This was the worst weather event that we've experienced since the ice storm of 2013. And approximately 120,000 homes and businesses across our service territory were affected, lost power, some for days, as our crews worked around the clock to repair our equipment. Fortunately, no customers in St. Catharines were affected by the storm, but it does underscore the fact that severe weather patterns are increasingly impacting electrical systems performance. And Electra is investing $34 million annually in grid resilience to insulate our service against the effects of climate change. And this includes investments in St. Catharines in a significant number of advanced distribution management systems, including automated switches, which will improve restoration times. The second major trend we're seeing is the continued emergence of distributed energy resources, otherwise known as DERs, on the grid. DERs include behind-the-meter generation and electricity storage, demand response, and conservation initiatives. And these resources empower consumers to take more control of their electricity and energy requirements. The future of electricity systems will need to be nimble, grid edge, and local. And Electra is preparing the grid for enhanced customer choice and more integrated and intelligent power systems. The trend towards e-mobility, which includes the electrification of mass transportation and the adoption of hybrid or battery electric passenger vehicles, will also have a profound impact on grid operations in the future. We currently estimate that there are approximately 24,000 electric vehicles in our service territory, and we expect to be able to manage EV growth over the next 3 to 5 years within current system capacity. However, current projections indicate there will be between 1.5 and 1.8 million EVs within Electra's service area by 2040. And this will require an additional 10,000 megawatts of charging capacity, of which at least 30 to 40% is anticipated to be off-peak charging. Electra is proactively preparing for the future of EVs and currently promoting systems to accommodate anticipated load growth. We've advocated for the design of an ultra-low overnight EV rate and recently held an event announcing the funding of 50 publicly available level 2 chargers. And this event was hosted by Mayor Sendzik and held at the Kiwanis Center on Carlton Street. The way electricity is generated, distributed, and consumed is rapidly changing, with consumers wanting ever-increasing flexibility and independence. This includes the move toward net zero emissions, decentralization of power through DERs, and the emergence of e-mobility. The grid must be resilient and adaptable to respond to these changes. Furthermore, we need to enhance the customer experience and broaden service offerings to consumers to increase our value proposition. All utilities must adapt to this profound transformation, and Electra sees it as an opportunity, and our strategy is based on 3 foundational pillars: customer experience, grid modernization, and enterprise growth. The Ontario Energy Board sets minimum performance standards for all distribution companies in Ontario, and I'm pleased to report that Electra met or exceeded on each of these categories for the year 2021. This was especially challenging in 21, as the impact of COVID significantly increased call duration times due to the complexity of calls during COVID, with many customers trying to manage arrears and payment methodologies. Operations, maintenance, and administrative costs per customer have always been a key benchmark for the Ontario Energy Board and other regulators to monitor local distribution company or LDC relative performance. Electra's OM&A per customer has increased by 2.4% over the 5-year period from 2016 to 2021. And this is well below and is amongst the lowest rate of increase of our peer group, in addition to well below the inflation rate cumulatively, which results in a net real reduction in costs, and Electra has one of the lowest operating costs per customer in the province. So when we look at how the electricity bill breaks down, it's important to remember that Electra collects charges for all companies or organizations that supply and deliver power to consumers. This would include, for example, collecting payments on behalf of Ontario Power Generation and Bruce Power for generation costs, the transmission costs paid to Hydro One to operate and maintain the high voltage transmission system, carrying electricity from generating stations to Electra's service territory. Electra's delivery charge is approximately 24% of the average residential electricity customer's total bill. In other words, we retain approximately 24 cents of every dollar collected. The other 76 cents we collect on behalf of other organizations within the electricity supply chain. And Electra's portion of the bill covers the local distribution system that delivers power directly to the homes and businesses in the city of St. Catharines. Electra continues to compare favorably to large urban utility peer group when it comes to rates. Monthly bills for customers in Electra's St. Catharines service territory compares positively to their neighbors and other large electricity distributors. For example, a residential customer in Electra's service territory consuming 750 kilowatt hours per month would have an annual savings of approximately $120 per year compared to a large urban utility for the same electricity service. And with that, I'll turn it over to John Decew, who will give a brief update on 2021 financial results. John?
Hi, good evening. So we had an excellent year in 2021, exceeding the budget overall by about $36 million. And most of that favor, while we performed very well operationally, and despite the impacts of COVID on operating costs, most notably credit losses, we had some, what I would say is one-time favorable experience and new contribution from Holland Power Services, our energy restoration business out on the East Coast. We realized a CDM incentive from the IESO with respect to past conservation and demand management programs of about $12 million. And we also sold our Mavis facility as part of our plan to consolidate Mavis in Brampton into a new operations facility on Kennedy Road, which yielded about $14 million. So collectively, those three items contributed to most of the favorability on the year. Sorry, Sandra, if you could move to the consolidated results slide. Yeah. Thanks, yeah. And actually to the next slide now. So dividends, correspondingly, dividends were in excess of the budget for the year, about $21.5 million. The budget for dividends was 65.6, and the actual result with the final installment paid to you in March was 87.1 million, so 21.5 greater than budget. And you can see on this slide what's happened in terms of dividends since the merger. And while we're modestly below the business case, the original Electra business case, we have provided to the Electra shareholders almost $100 million in excess of what the status quo had the entities not merged would have been in the projection. Next slide, please. This is the forecast for dividends compared to both the merger business case as well as in the bottom part of that chart, the no merger case, essentially the status quo. And as we've mentioned in the past, lower revenues and some higher costs are the principal drivers of changes in dividend expectations. Most notably, OEB decisions and policy impacts with respect to expectations for incremental capital recoveries from the merger not realized. We've had some higher regulated costs, monthly billing and other costs, some of those costs imposed through COVID. The Conservation First framework was canceled a couple of years ago, resulting in lower prospective incentives from conservation programs than what we would have expected otherwise. And of course, the continued impact of COVID, we expect that to persist into 2022. That notwithstanding, as you can see, dividends do remain materially above the no merger business case, about $38 million across the three forecast years. And just to reiterate, in the past, the purpose of the merger was really to realize on synergy savings from bringing the entities together. And as Brian's reported in the past, we've overachieved on that. So the merger continues to be a resounding success. Back to you, Brian.
Brian, you are muted.
Sorry. We just have a few more slides on community updates, so briefly go through that. In 22, Electra plans to invest approximately $250 million across our service area, including St. Catharines, in order to deliver reliable electricity to your community, our community. And we continue to bring much needed infrastructure improvements to St. Catharines for our annual capital plan, including expanding infrastructure to accommodate load growth in the area, which includes $7 million over the next 5 years. And in 21, Electra invested $2.1 million in voltage conversion and capacity relief projects, including approximately 150 new poles and 1 new feeder at the Bunting transformer station. We're also replacing deteriorating infrastructure to maintain and improve reliability and service quality. And in 2021, that included over 4 kilometers of cable affecting more than 250 customers. That cable was replaced and injected in order to improve performance, longevity, and efficiency. We issue quarterly newsletters to our municipal government partners through our Ally newsletter, which you should be receiving electronically. Ally provides updates and links to Electra programs that may be of interest to councillors and their constituents. Our customer newsletter is issued quarterly as well, and it provides updates on electricity rate adjustments, financial programs that are available to homes and businesses, and key contact addresses and phone numbers to assist customers who may need to reach us. In 21, Electra invested more than $160,000 to support community groups in St. Catharines. Our support included gifts to the Niagara Health Foundation, United Way Niagara, and Start Me Up Niagara, Coldest Night of the Year, as well as Niagara's Children's Center and Hospital Niagara. And we're very excited to be the official energy supplier of the Niagara 2022 Canada Summer Games, where we've installed a solar energy generating system at the Henley Rowing Center. We've also committed to a $50,000 pledge over 5 years to the YWCA Niagara to support the construction of a new 24-unit apartment building, which houses the Home for Good program. This program supports women who have experienced chronic homelessness, as well as family shelter for homeless families and transitional housing for women-led families. We have received several awards and recognitions, which I won't go through now, but the list is there. And then finally, we believe that as we've come out of the pandemic, we've had strong financial and operational performance. We believe that our evolving business environment is creating risks, but also opportunities. And we're adapting to each of those through Strategy 2.0, which is accelerating our progress to become a more customer-centric, innovative, integrated energy services company, which is focused on grid growth and customer. It was a very good year in 2021, and we believe Electra has a bright future. Thank you very much, Councillor Harris and councillors at large, and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Perfect, thank you. I'll look to the group to see if there's any questions. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Bentz. Brian, I'm not sure if you can comment much on this since we're not in the generation business, but when you talk about climate change being such a factor, which obviously it is, and we keep reading about how electrification, particularly of vehicles, is going to be such a contributor or a solution. But I keep thinking to myself, where is all this electricity coming from? Are we actually going to be increasing the use of fossil fuels to generate all the extra electricity that's going to be required? Or?
So we've effectively decarbonized the Ontario grid over the last 20 years. We've shut down most of the fossil fuel plants, which were primarily coal. There is still natural gas at the margin, which is a load following source of electricity. But Ontario's electricity grid is approximately 94% emissions free. With increasing electrical load, there will be challenges, and the IESO has recognized, the Independent Electricity System Operator has recognized that there could be what they describe as resource adequacy issues, which means unless we plan properly for generation supply, we may have issues with respect to making sure there is sufficient supply of electricity from a generation point of view. I think in the near term, we are going to see probably more natural gas, which is emitting, than we otherwise would have because of electrical load growth. But I don't think we're going to go back to the days of, less than 94% of the grid being emission free.
Thank you for that. I know that we're using mostly natural gas, but of course there's a lot of criticism of the use of natural gas. But it's still much better than coal, obviously, and maybe we will start using more nuclear. I don't know, but thank you for that answer.
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Benz. You mentioned Henley Grandstand with photovoltaics, solar panels up there. In terms of other municipalities, I don't know that we have too many panels on other civic buildings. Is there any programs or has any other opportunities been identified? And how do we stack up against other municipalities within Electra?
I think there are a lot of rooftop solar installations. I think that in terms of the penetration rate with respect to solar at the residential level, it's similar to what we see across the GTA. Commercial buildings, it probably is, I'll say slightly lower. And there probably are opportunities to increase rooftop solar. I don't think solar arrays necessarily are something that would be under consideration. But this is something that we really want to be a catalyst for at Electra. We call it, and we've got a lot of pilot projects on things we call virtual power plants, where effectively you take a battery and you take a solar panel, put on the roof, and you put software with it, and you can optimize the charging and the storage in the home. And we want to be able to do that through things potentially like on-bill financing for customers to enable more solar generation within the community. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking at to pursue more.
Terrific. And then, yeah, and as Carlos said, you're not in the generation business, but we know nuclear is still the dominant source, and we've got aging nuclear plants, particularly Darlington. I know Darlington is looking at the smaller scale or modular nuke. Do we have any? Are you in touch with?
Yes.
The big players on this. Yes.
So the SMRs, the small modular reactors, as they're called, is something that OPG is promoting quite strongly. And I think they have, IP or patents on that technology. Having talked to OPG, it sounds like its limited application is really to like northern communities, so mining communities and remote communities. It's not something that I think we'll see mass adoption in highly populated areas. And that's really where they're focusing SMRs.
So we're going to continue to see very expensive capital expenditures to refurbish existing nuclear plants, I take it.
Well, Bruce is coming out of service in the next 3 to 5 years, and Darlington, as you said, is being refurbished. The 4 reactors there are being refurbished. So I guess it remains to be seen the cost of those, not in our hands, but we're the pass-through agent. So
Thanks a lot, Brian. This Bruce is going out of service right now too. Thank you.
Very good.
Perfect. Are there any other questions?
Councillor Kushner has his hands up.
Councillor Kushner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question I have is to John. John indicated that the merger has been a resounding success, that we have an additional $100 million in dividends compared to pre-merger. Are we looking at other possible mergers? Are we comparing ourselves with the bigger utilities to see what our operating costs are? You've indicated we're comparing ourselves with other large utilities, but are we doing a comparison with the largest utilities?
Well, I think Brian provided some comparisons previously. I think generally speaking, we're trying to compare ourselves within a peer group, but we do compare very broadly, and we compare very well from an OM&A perspective. I don't know, Brian, if you want to take the question on potential other merger activity for Electra.
So we believe that we have some very strong core competencies in post-merger integration and being able to reduce consolidated OM&A, and we have demonstrated that. So there is, I think, a business case to be made for consolidation within the, whether it's a geographically contiguous utility or other. These transactions are very rare, unfortunately, but when the opportunities arise, for example, Lexicon, which is the utility in Eastern Ontario, is looking at, Pickering is looking at a potential sale of a merger of their utility, and that would be something that we may look at if it makes sense, if it makes commercial sense. We believe in the model. We believe that consolidation does drive value and allows scale for investments in distributed automation and investments in other types of value-added services for consumers, like we were talking about before, renewable generation in the home, et cetera, distributed energy resources for automotive customers, which we've applied. So always looking, believe in the model, but like I said, these transactions are rare in Ontario.
Thank you. And my last question is with respect to generation. You indicated that that is a potential issue because of increases in demand for electricity. And Singapore is an island. They have no sources of electricity, and what they're doing is incineration. And that used to be a very bad word in terms of generating electricity, but they claim that with their incineration methods, there are no pollutants. Has that been a consideration in Ontario?
And through our non-regulated affiliate, we do look at potential investments in generation sources, even though we aren't, we're a licensed distributor, but on the competitive side, we can own generation. We have looked at certain technologies in the energy from waste space. I say the technology is maturing and emerging, and there are things like whether it's anaerobic digesters or just gasification plants. There are potential technologies that can, I think, tick the boxes on emission profile and investments, et cetera, on that front. So it is something we are looking at, we'll continue to look at, and certainly we'll work through our shareholders as we do that.
Thank you.
Councillor Littleton, or Councillor Porter, I mean.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I was looking with interest at the non-wires alternatives demonstration project for the DERs, where you're, it looks like a pilot project where you're monitoring how, like, district energy systems, for example, could work. So you're assessing it. What do you think is going to happen after this study? Do you think that you're going to put something formal in place for these kinds of energy systems, like the smaller local energy systems, that would maybe help an area or municipality come up with a district energy system of its own, because there is some kind of program in place to be able to sell energy?
Yes, we believe there's great potential for the non-wires alternative project. The traditional electricity grid has all been transacted at the wholesale level. So the ISO acts as a proxy for all the consumers in Ontario and buys the power on their behalf, which is generated and distributed basically to our system. So any available resources that are downstream in the distribution system aren't necessarily visible or contracted by the ISO. So if you do have behind the meter generation or demand response, we want to engage those resources and have consumers paid for those resources if they're already there, rather than building new generation, especially when we have increasing electricity demand. So we believe this model is replicable. We believe it's been a success. We had a very hot conditions about 3 weeks ago, and we contracted several thousand megawatts of power through that NWA grid edge model. The issue is we need a regulatory model to make that happen. So the Ontario Energy Board has to basically implement what we call a distribution system operator model, which changes what we do. But bottom line, we think it's scalable. We need to advocate more for it, but the time is right to advocate more for it as we increase electricity demand, and we need to, have a, all of the above type resourcing model for electricity in Ontario going forward. So thanks for that question, and thanks for looking up that NWA pilot.
Thank you. And would you recommend that municipalities start, if they have their own utilities, for example, that we start kind of exploring this, or at least looking into any possibilities?
Yes, I think the time for advocacy and coordination is now. We'd be happy to assist you in that regard if you would, I think there's a good partnership potential there.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, could I have a motion to, what was that?
Councillor Harris. So, Mr. Benz, thank you very much for the presentation. So Councillor Kushner touched on the generation side. So what I'm hearing is we do have a very aged generation station here in our community. It requires significant upgrades. I've been on the board of Hydro previously, and I know that there's slated to be quite substantive upgrades over the next number of years. So as what I'm hearing is that when we have infrastructure like that, there is an interest, or could be an interest from Electra to look at that kind of generation station, which City of St. Catharines, I don't know why we're in the generation business moving forward, but could there be an opportunity for Electra?
Yes, I think, we would look at that. We did look at it a few years back, but I think, given that conditions have changed, and it would make sense for us in terms of our strategy to acquire, it is a hydroelectric asset, and, it is supplying one of our customers. I think that is something that yes, we would definitely look at, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, at least a couple of years ago, council, the number of councillors weren't ready for that, but I hope what council is hearing today is that there's an opportunity, and I hope we're not going to sit on our hands any longer, and at least start a discussion. So I'll leave it at that, and thank you, Mr. Benz, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Perfect. Could I have a councillor move the motion to receive the update from Electra? Councillor Kushner, seconded by Councillor Garcia. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much for the presentation, Brian and John. And you guys don't have to hang out for the rest of the meeting if you don't want.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Okay, item number 6, annual resolutions. 6.1 audited financial statements. Can I have a counselor move the resolution, please?
I see Councillor Garcia's hand up.
Yeah, the screen's blank, so I don't actually see the council chamber. So Councillor Garcia is moving it. Can I have Councillor Porter second it? Be it resolved that the audited financial statements, including the balance sheet as of December 31st, 2021, and the statement of profit and loss, the fiscal year of the corporation ended on such date, are hereby received. I'll look to, are there any questions?
I don't see any questions in the chamber and no hands online.
Okay, I'll look to the corporate secretary for the recorded vote.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Dodge,
Yes.
Councillor Kushner,
Yes.
Councillor Littleton,
Yes.
Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Porter,
Yes.
Councillor Townsend,
Yes.
Councillor Williamson,
Yes.
Mayor Senzik,
Yes.
and Chair Harris.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Appointment of the auditor. Can I have a councillor move the resolution, please? Councillor Townsend, perhaps, seconded by Councillor Miller.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Be it resolved that the appointment of the auditor of the corporation be the same firm chosen by the corporation of the City of St. Catharines pursuant to the required selection process and authorizing the directors to fix the auditor's remuneration. Any questions? Seeing none, hearing none, I'll look to the clerk for the recorded vote.
Councillor Townsend,
Yes.
Councillor Williamson,
Yes.
Councillor Porter,
Yes.
Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Littleton,
Yes.
Councillor Kushner,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Dodge,
Yes.
Mayor Senzik,
Yes.
and Councillor Harris.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Item 7.1, 2021 to 2025 business plan. Can I have a councillor move the board recommendation, please? Moved by, I can't see any hands, so.
Councillor Phillips' hand is up, as is Councillor Kushner.
So moved by Phillips, seconded by Kushner. Be it resolved that the 2021-25 business plan be approved as presented. Any questions? I'll take it that it's been read. So are there any questions or?
Just an amendment if possible, Chair. Based on what we heard today, I think if we're looking at a business plan over the next 4 years, that the consideration or be it resolved that the city council, and I don't know what the wording would be to the clerk.
The shareholder
endorse the concept of potentially putting or endorse the concept of selling the utility to a purchaser that both the city council and the hydro board would approve of. So this is not approving the sale, it's just saying at least explore it, like put it back on the table and let's see if.
Would it make more sense to have the shareholder endorse engaging Electro in the possibility of divesting?
We can't single source, so it's got to be a process.
Is that friendly, Councillor Phillips? Yep, okay.
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Porter has a question.
I guess I do have a question. When we're moving towards kind of smaller, in the face of climate change, moving towards like some cities are doing district energy and Electra's coming up with, they're doing this pilot project that they just discussed. And there could be additional opportunities to raise revenue. I looked at the report and it's sort of recommending that we get some board members from the community with expertise to look at this as well. So I would like to maybe have us look at the board composition because we've been running the utility as a status quo, or like with the status quo for the last several years. I mean, I'll ask the board members here, have they been looking at opportunities to increase revenue? Have they been looking at opportunities for maybe some diversification, looking at what some other cities are doing with respect to district energy? I don't know. So I would say, could we bring this back for another meeting to look at the board composition and at least add a couple of experts from the community who could help us plan for the future?
We did have some experts on the board, the previous board, and that didn't, well, I'll leave that to another conversation. But I think what you would like to see is, I'm confident that the composition is not going to change in this term, because you're talking about some amendments to the bylaw and things like that. I would probably combine that with the board remuneration, but perhaps we could have a conversation at the next board meeting and come back with a recommendation that we endorse. So then the first term as council, and as council as the shareholder, they can look at it. It's similar to the next item that's on the agenda. Would that make sense?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so perhaps refer that second part to our next board meeting so we can discuss it, and then we'll have a recommendation to come back to the shareholder in the first term of next council.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? I'll look to the clerk for the recorded vote.
Councillor
Williamson.
Kushner has his
Bruce.
hand up, as does Councillor Williamson and Garcia.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have some concern with the amendment endorsing the concept of selling. In my opinion, would be better to explore the possibility of selling. I'm not in favor of selling our assets, which are very profitable. And I compare this to one of the provincial governments selling Highway 407. This to me is an annuity. We're getting dividends every year. And I'm very hesitant to, in fact, I'm opposed to selling the utility unless there's a very strong case. And to date, I have not seen a strong case. So I can't support the concept.
Okay, so can we change the wording then, that we investigate the possibility of selling? Does that help, instead of endorse the concept, investigate the possible selling or divesting of the utility, or would that be okay? Because we're not agreeing to selling it, we're just investing.
Well, that's much better, Mr. Mayor, but I've got very strong feelings on selling it.
I'd accept that, Chair.
Okay, perfect. Councillor Williamson, were you next?
I'm not sure.
Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Councillor Williamson had his hand up first, but I just wanted to make to comment on the referral that Councillor Porter had presented. Just that when we reviewed the business plan at the hydro board level, I raised the issue and we discussed the fact that staff said that they do not have the capacity at this time to look at other opportunities. I think that the board can have opportunities come to them, and that happens occasionally. If an opportunity comes along, which is an interesting opportunity for extra revenue, I just want council to be aware that staff would probably need some extra resources, they're saying, to spend the time investigating that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Williamson.
Thank you. Mr. Benz did mention that we're behind some of the other municipalities in terms of, in particular, rooftop photovoltaic solar. So I don't know if we necessarily need, members of the board may know better, but an amendment to the effect of the shareholder explore opportunities for green energy projects, in particular solar energy. He mentioned commercial and residential, and then there's also, of course, institutional and civic buildings too. I don't know if that needs to be an amendment or that can be just taken care of through our board members.
Can you repeat that? So you're asking
explore opportunity for green energy.
100.
Sorry.
100%. I think.
Can I interject?
If Anthony's.
I have a notice of motion coming about this tonight, so, and I met with staff to explore whether it should be through hydro or the city. I just wanted to let Councillor Williamson know that. Okay,
so we can take this as a direction, Councillor Williamson, and we'll wait to see Councillor Porter's, and then we'll go from there, if that makes sense.
Fair enough.
Okay. So, and if there's no other questions, I'll look to the Deputy Clerk to call the vote, or Corporate Secretary.
Okay, so on the motion, we have Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Mayor Senzik.
Yes.
And Councillor Harris.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Hydro Board remuneration. Can I have a councillor move it? I believe Councillor Littleton's going to move it, and I'll ask Councillor Kushner to second it.
Yes.
Be it resolved that the decision on any change to board remuneration be deferred until the start of the 2022-26 term of council. And I believe Councillor Littleton's going to ask that it come back in the first quarter of council the next term. Am I correct, Councillor Littleton?
That's correct, and I'd also like some direction that, I know we can't really say anything, but just the hope is that they will look at the recommendation in here to change the remuneration.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any questions? Hearing none, seeing none, I'll look to the Deputy Clerk to call the recorded vote.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Oh. Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Mayor Senzik.
No.
And Chair Harris.
Yes.
And that's carried.
There's no closed session scheduled, and there's no motions arising from the closed sessions. The next item is the confirmation of all acts. Can I have a councillor move the resolution? Councillor Miller, perhaps?
Love to.
Seconded by Councillor Townsend.
Seconded.
Be it resolved that all acts, contract proceedings, appointments, bylaws, elections, and payments enacted, made, done, given and taken by the directors and the officers of the corporation since the date of the last annual meeting of the shareholder as the same are set out or referred to in the minutes of the corporation or in the financial statements submitted to this meeting be and the same are hereby approved, sanctioned, and confirmed. Any questions? Hearing none, I'll look to the corporate secretary to call the vote.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes,
Counselor Dodge,
Yes.
Counselor McPherson,
Yes.
Counselor Phillips,
Yes.
Counselor Townsend,
Yes.
Counselor Littleton,
Yes.
Mayor Senzik. He's moving rooms. Counselor and Chair Harris.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Now my most favorite time of the meeting, so we have a break before the next meeting, it's adjournment. And who would like to adjourn the meeting, move the meeting to be adjourned?
Everybody.
Counselor McPherson had her hand up first, I think, and Counselor Littleton seconded. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously.
All right, good evening and welcome to the regular meeting council for Monday, June 13th. We've got some items on the agenda we want to get through, so we're going to start with the O Canada, followed by a moment of reflection, and then our city clerk, Bonnie Nstico-Dunk, will be doing the land acknowledgement. If I can ask everybody to please stand who's in here, and please stand if you're at home.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Carton bras et porter le paix, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you very much. I'll turn it over to the city clerk for the land acknowledgement.
The land on which council meets today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this is a reminder that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous peoples.
All right, thank you very much. So we got a bit of a mayor's report. I do want to welcome back Councillor Sorrento to council chambers here today. I'd also like to congratulate our St. Catharines MPP Jenny Stevens, as well as St. Catharines Niagara Centre MPP Jeff Birch, and the Niagara Falls representative Wayne Gates, as well as the Niagara West Sam Oosterhoff for their re-elections to provincial legislature. Looking forward to working with them in the coming months, and then with the turn of council, I'm sure there will be an engaged MPPs working on the issues that are facing us today. So with that, this past weekend, we did experience some unsettling issues in our community. One was gun violence that had taken place that cost the life of one individual and 2 others were injured. And again, I want to thank Niagara EMS, the Niagara Regional Police, St. Catharines Fire, as well as Niagara Health for their efforts in this situation. It was a very challenging situation on all accounts, and I also want to offer our thoughts and prayers with the family of the victims. This does show that we're not immune to gun violence in our community, but it's not unique to St. Catharines. Anyone who wants to take a look at what's happening in similar sized communities across the country will see a similar amount of gun violence on the rise. I had a meeting today with the Chief of Police, Chief McCulloch, and CIO David Oakes was in on that meeting as well. He had indicated that gun violence incidences are increasing across the country. It's not just here in St. Catharines. There's a number of variables that are causing this. It's not just a police issue, it's a social issue, it's a societal issue, it's an economic issue. There's a lot of different things that are driving this, and so The message to our community is that this council has been focused on trying to be partners, both with the provincial and federal governments, but also with the region, to try and get a better understanding and to ensure the safety of our community, but also that we're breaking the chains of gun violence where they may be occurring. So it's a complex issue, but what the chief had assured me is that it was an isolated incident. So in terms of the neighborhood area, there's no concern for continuation of what we saw on the weekend. That doesn't give a lot of comfort to those who experienced it overnight, but know that the Niagara Regional Police are working very hard to catch the perpetrator and so that justice can be served. Also on the weekend, over the same course of that evening, there was a significant amount of vandalism that had taken place in the Harriet Tubman area. That vandalism was racially motivated, it was homophobic, it was bigoted, and it was horrific. I do want to thank Councillor McPherson and Councillor Porter. They took their Sunday to deal with this issue. They were active with the DSBN to address it and with the neighboring area. It was unsettling for a lot of folks. It took place both at Harriet Tubman, at a number of private properties, and then at the Collegiate as well. We did bring this issue up again with the Chief of Police. They are, again, while they were stretched with the investigation around the gun shooting, they did have resources deployed to this. And he assured me as well that what he has come to understand through some of the research that he's working on with the chiefs of polices for Ontario is that the incidences of hate crime are increasing. And that should be no surprise to anybody around this table. We're seeing more and more hate crimes taking place. We cannot be, the word I'm looking for is not complacent, but we can't just sit back and think that it's not happening. So I do know that the police are going to be working with the neighborhood areas, but it also, we need to work with our BIPOC community, our LGBTQ plus community, to ensure and show them this is not the type of community that we have, and that we're going to do what we can to root out that kind of hate. I know councillors were aware of the words that were used. Councillor McPherson had sent some of those, so you're all aware of the language that was used on these buildings and on the statue of Harriet Tubman herself. So this is it's a heinous crime. It's despicable what an individual or individuals would do, but we've got to prove to the larger community this is not who we are. And sometimes it's easy to say, or it's the flippant thing to say it's not who we are, but we have to prove it. And so we have to work a lot harder, and we've got to work with our BIPOC brothers and sisters and our LGBTQ2+ to show them that this is a safe community, that this is not a community that would tolerate anything like that. So it was a difficult weekend for us in St. Catharines, and it's one that we have to come together on and work on as a group. So thank you to the councillors who took that initiative. And on a positive note, we were at Richard Pierpoint Park with the celebration, and I know Councillor Miller, Councillor Porter, Councillor Sorrento, Councillor Dodge, Councillor McPherson, we were there to unveil the beautiful wayfinding and information sign that our museum, led by Kathleen Powell, did an amazing job. So if those who may not know, Centennial Gardens has now become Richard Pierpoint Park. Rochelle Bush did an outstanding job working with Councillors Porter and Councillor Porter and Councillor Littleton to really push this initiative forward. And it's as Rochelle Bush said, it's the first park in Niagara named after a person of color. And Richard Pierpoint had been in our community since the early 1800s, late 1700s. And he was a black loyalist. He came up here defending the crown from the American Revolution. He fought in the War of 1812. He was the founder of the Color Corps that can trace its roots right down to Niagara here. A significant historical figure in our country and our region, and it took us this long to properly identify this important man in our history. So it was a great celebration. A lot of people came out. Our staff were there as well. And Councillor Garcia was there, and Councillor Dodge. So there was a good showing of councillors that were in attendance, but also staff We had a number of staff, Director Christie, CAO Oaks, our Deputy CAO, Aaron was there, as well as a whole host of our staff. So it's a positive step forward. And what I do hope is that for future councils, there will be an opportunity to continue to tell the stories of everybody in our community, not just those who were largely seen as the story, the ones that history was written about, that came from just a certain segment of our community, that our entire history will continue to be told. Also, the In the Soil Arts Festival was a great success this weekend. I want to thank all the organizers, and I know a number of councillors were out all weekend supporting the In the Soil Arts Festival. It was great to see the downtown full of people. The Folk Arts Festival was also in full swing. Sosafran had their open house on Saturday, and I know a number of councillors were there dancing, which was fantastic, as well as the Slovenian open house was yesterday afternoon, and I know I saw a number of councillors there as well. So if anyone wants to check out, the open houses for folk arts are back in full swing. You can go to the Folk Arts website, and you can see all the different times. It's between now and the end of June. I think there's 13 open houses, so all the different food, the music, the dance, it's all coming back to life, which is great to see. And the downtown, again, with the downtown promenade, looked fantastic. So I want to say thank you to the Downtown Association. And in addition to that, there's a land back unity jam that takes place at the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre behind in the June and John Man Raceway. And that's as part of National Indigenous Month. So I'm encouraging everybody to come out on the 21st as it's Indigenous Solidarity Day. And it's going to be a great performance of musicians that take place from 4 p.m. to sunset at the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre. This is a great opportunity to show our allyship with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. The tickets are now on sale with the Canada Games, for the Canada Games, and there's tickets are going fast. Last week I had an opportunity to be in Ottawa for the lighting of the torch at the Centennial Flame. CAO Oaks was there, as well as Director of Economic Development, Brian York. A number of board members from the Canada Games were there. It was wonderful to see the torch being lit. I want to thank our chair of the Canada Games, Doug Hamilton, who's done an outstanding job of being a strong leader for this once-in-a-lifetime event that will be taking place in early August 6th through the 21st. And so you're going to be starting to see the torch come into Niagara. The first one's going to land, I believe, on June 25th, starting in Thorold, and it's being currently carried on one of the CSL ships coming through the Great Lakes. And so it's the first time that the torch will have made a journey in that fashion. So there's going to be a lot of firsts when it comes to the Canada Games. And I got to say, the Canada Games Park with the junior athletics playing out of there right now, if you want to see some great lacrosse, they're averaging about 900 people a game. That's double what they were getting at the Jack. So they're getting a lot of people out to watch. And everybody that I've bumped into at that facility has just been amazed at the sheer scale, size. They're impressed with the design. They're impressed with the mobility, the people who are able to use it. For our public, get an opportunity. It's open to the public. Take the opportunity to go up there and check it out. I've seen a lot of different families up there just walking around, and they're so impressed with the size and scale of that building. And with that, we have an opportunity to celebrate tonight, and it's a celebration for an individual who has pretty much, I think, been the anchor of this council in the last term of council for the last 11 years. And she has been the one that's guided us through some challenging discussions. She's kept us on track. She's given me a lot of confidence in my role as mayor, and the confidence comes because of her experience. She's got over 32 years of experience in municipal government, and from everywhere from Thorold to the mighty town of Welland and Thorold to St. Catharines was her final landing home. And I got to say, as an individual who got to see on a regular basis her interaction with her staff. She's a mentor, she's a friend, she's someone who has empowered her team to grow in their positions, and I think she's allowed us to grow as councillors as well. And that's been, I think, the brightest for me as a mayor is having a strong clerk. And I know there's some councillors who've been around the table for a long time, much longer than I am, and having Bonnie being able to talk to the councillors to, talk them through something I could never have done. And I say that honestly. I don't have the lens of history in terms of how procedures work and processes, but Bonnie was able to really keep us working as a team And I think that's the greatest compliment you can give to a leader is their ability to get the team to work together. And that's what Bonnie has done for the last 11 years. This is her last meeting, and we will have a staff celebration coming up, but this is her last public meeting. And so I wanted the opportunity to say thank you on behalf of our community for everything that you've done, on behalf of the citizens that you've engaged with over the years, to take them through a lot of the processes that can often be complicated to the average person. And you've done it in a very gracious way. You've done it in a very open and welcome way. Many of you may not know, but she brought the weddings to City Hall. So that was an idea that Bonnie had, that we can do civic weddings here. And in the beginning it was, no, it's not going to be successful. This won't be successful. You're only going to get 5 or 6 weddings a year. I think as of last count, last year, I think they had over 262 plus weddings in a year. And it does, again, proves how Bonnie was able to look at the environment and see where people wanted to experience something different. And civic weddings were something that we've been able to offer here. You've been the officiant of so many different weddings. We've done Halloween weddings, we've done New Year's Eve weddings, we've done Christmas weddings. There's been weddings held on significant holiday events, and it was all because of your foresight to see the opportunities. And one thing about Bonnie is she loves to put smiles on people's faces, and what better way than marrying 2 people, and no matter from where you come from, and that's the one thing that's beautiful about this room here, is that no matter who you are, no matter who you love, this is a place that you get to actually say I do. And Bonnie, you were the architect of that as well. So I'm going to turn it over to you before I get emotional, and if you want to say a few words.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do want to say a few words, and I think I get 5 minutes. So
Can we get the timer on, please?
I think you can start the clock. Yeah, start the clock. I want to thank you very much for those kind sentiments. I appreciate it very, very much. As I clerk my final meeting this evening, I'm feeling very maudlin. I'm going to try not to be weepy, I promise. Transitions are filled with both anticipation and with sorrow. I personally have felt all kinds of feelings since I announced my retirement. That announcement made the next chapter of my life a reality. And that reality is unfamiliar and rather scary territory for me. I want to take a few minutes, Mr. Mayor, to say how sincerely grateful I am for having spent the last 11 years of my career here in St. Catharines. Leaving one's home and comfort zone is not always easy, and when Tom and I made the decision to move here from Thunder Bay, we did so really not knowing much about Niagara, or career prospects for me. But we were excited and felt so privileged to have an opportunity to be closer to our children and grandchildren. I literally just prepared my CV and business cards and scouted the municipalities. I walked into the City Hall and went to the Human Resources Department with a CV in hand and business card, introduced myself, and was greeted by staff here who were trying to understand what specific job I was applying for. To which I responded, I'm just leaving this with you. There might be an opportunity in the future, and here you go. Then they reluctantly did take the envelope. I then walked about the building and was so impressed by its age and beauty. But I left thinking I'll likely not ever be working here. However, 3 years to the day after taking a position in Welland and Thorold, a posting for a clerk came up here, and it was forwarded to me by a friend, and the rest is history. That's how I got here. But now, to the folks around the table that day I was hired, thanks for seeing in me a fit for your organization. I will be forever grateful. Jeanette, if you're here, you were one of those individuals. Thank you for believing in me and becoming a good colleague and a great friend over the past 11 years. To the colleagues that retired before me, Shelley Chemnitz and Heather Salter, you were strong female leaders who managed with emotional intelligence, and you possessed the skills necessary to stand out and be respected as leaders among both men and women. To Dave, you have found the perfect balance between strength and kindness, and the senior team, managers, and everyone in this corporation will benefit by your leadership. I want to thank all my colleagues in this organization for having faith in me and respecting and trusting me. The staff in this organization are really an amazing, dedicated team of individuals who continually give their best to this community. It was a pleasure working with you all. I will miss the camaraderie and the day-to-day stories that we shared. I always say that your work family is dress rehearsal for your home family. We have so much time together. We truly get to know one another very well because we share good and bad times. And whether we ask for it or whether we're asked for it or not, we always have an opinion or a thought for someone going through a good or bad time. This is important to someone who doesn't have a family here in St. Catharines, so thanks for your friendship and being my work family. To you counselors, I want to say thank you for putting yourselves out there and wanting to serve the citizens of St. Catharines in this capacity. These roles can be thankless and at times, quite frankly, soul-destroying. It's so easy to be an armchair counselor and be critical of the work that you all do here because everyone feels their needs are the most important, and your job is to make decisions based on the greater community need. You need to balance both political and practical decisions to be truly successful. So stay calm and carry on. I wish those of you who are running again in October the absolute best. Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you for being a great supporter of my work and trusting me throughout the past 7.5 years. The City Clerk and Mayor must have a great working relationship, and I feel we were textbook. There are so many moving parts that needed to be considered when performing your job, all important and many fragile. I hope I was able to lend a helping hand when needed. As a resident of St. Catharines, thank you for being one of the most engaged and passionate mayors that I've had the pleasure of working with in my 47-year career. I know that whatever you choose to do next, you'll be all in because that's just who you are. To my colleagues in the Clerk's Department, you rock. I cannot thank you enough for always being amazing and truly empathetic to people we serve every day. Leah, Kristen, Donna, Kevin, Kyra, Sarah, and the legal team. To you, I simply say you got this and continue to be awesome in all you do. I watched you perform many feats at the counter with residents and needs of the services we offer. You truly are compassionate, and that's what's important. It doesn't matter who witnesses your kindness. It will be truly remembered by the recipients. Keep on making a difference. It's what truly matters. A special shout out and thank you to the man behind the scenes, Evan McGinty. You are an amazing person who goes about doing all things impossible, making it possible for every one of us to look as though this is all seamless. No one has benefited from your perfection more than me personally. I appreciate your dedication, work ethic, sense of humor, and you're laughing at my humor, loyalty, and most importantly, your friendship. I will miss you. As your music fade, U2, specifically Bono, says the world needs more Canadas. I say the world needs more Evans. I will be done momentarily. To my incredible children and grandchildren, you're such a source of pride to me, and I am looking forward to spending more time with you. I think that's what you wanted, right? Finally, to my husband, Tom, thank you for your love, support, and for the opportunity to move to Niagara. Your ability to listen and for sharing your incredible insights and wisdom with me when I needed it most was always helpful. You really are my rock. Thank you to you all, and best wishes.
Can we adjourn the meeting now? All orders of business, can I have a motion just to approve all orders of business? Let's make this the quickest meeting of Bonnie's tenure here. I think Councillor Kushner wants to make that motion. Thank you very much, Bonnie, and thank you for the heartfelt words from all of us. We are going to miss you. So we do have an agenda in front of us, and it's the last agenda for our city clerk. And so we have the adoption of the agenda. And I'll turn it over to City Clerk. We've got a couple of amendments that we have on the agenda.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The following amendments are being made to this evening's agenda. Item 10.2, reconsideration of the previously decided motion regarding P20-068 Grantham Rail Trail Design Build, Trail Improvements Project, Capital Budget Reallocation, will be discussed after the adoption of the agenda. Only the decision to reconsider the item will be done after the adoption of the agenda. If the decision to reconsider passes, the delegations and the vote on the original motion will be done later in the evening as part of item 10.2. In Sugar Sink, Council has correspondence received from item 7.1, public meeting regarding penalties for violations of the city's waste and long grasses and weeds bylaw. And that's it.
Okay. And so over the course of the evening, as councillors are making motions and putting their names forward, if you want to make a comment, and feel free. It's open opportunity for yourself to thank Bonnie as well. So, mover to adopt the agenda. I got Councillor Littleton, seconded by Councillor Dodge, and all in favor? Okay, and so for this agenda, we have moved up 10.2, which is the reconsideration of the previously decided motion regarding the Grantham Rail Trail Design and Build, trail improvements. And so Councillor Phillips has provided a reconsideration motion for an item where legally binding action has already taken place on the item. And so with this, I'm going to turn it over to the City Clerk because there is some subtlety to the nuance of this issue, and she'll explain why we have to actually go through a couple of steps in order to potentially get to the final discussion point. So turn it over to the City Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given a contractual arrangement has been signed, Council will need to suspend their rules this evening to vote on this. For the public watching this evening's Council's procedural bylaw M17.7 states that a motion that was decided by Council cannot be reconsidered if action has been taken in implementing the resolution, resulting in legally binding commitments that are in place on the date that notice of motion to reconsider is provided at a meeting or to the clerk. Our acting city solicitor, Sean Dorshani, has reviewed all signed agreements and provided verification to me. To suspend this rule this evening, Council will need a 2/3 vote to pass, which means 9 members to vote in favor of suspending the rules. And should this lose, then no reconsideration on the main motion. Should this pass, then councillors will need to vote on the reconsideration motion. Only one councillor, Councillor Williamson, is unable to put that motion on the floor as he voted against the original motion. You must be on the prevailing side to put a reconsideration motion on the floor, and it will require a seconder. It also will require 2/3 to pass, 9 members voting in favor of a reconsideration on the original motion. Okay.
All right, thank you very much for that. So the first motion on the floor is the motion related to the procedural bylaw, so that's suspending that section M17.7. And with that, we'll have a recorded vote. And this is, again, related to the contractual obligation, and it's a legally binding action that has already taken place. To the clerk.
So Councillor Phillips is the mover to suspend the rules?
Yes.
And you have a seconder? Councillor Dodge? Okay, thank you, Councillor Dodge. Okay, to suspend the rules, Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Garcia?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
No.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Councillor Littleton?
No.
Councillor McPherson?
No.
Councillor Miller?
No.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Porter?
No.
Councillor Sorrento?
No.
I'm sorry, no. Councillor Townsend?
No.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik?
No.
And that's lost.
Okay, so to the clerk, can you just remind what happens next now that that has failed?
There will be no further action.
Okay, so we go to the adoption of the minutes, and that's for the meeting held May 30th. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Sorrento. All in favor of the minutes? Okay. We do have conflict of interest. Conflict of interest, Councillor Phillips.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have a conflict of interest in 10.3 as my son is employed with the AGCO.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. And any other conflicts? I'm not seeing any hands up. So we now move on to the consent reports. So there has been nothing moved from consent. And, Councillor Garcia?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, I don't want to pull anything, but I had a question from the clerk, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
And before I ask that question, I must say that I totally agree with everything you said about her, and she has been amazing, and it certainly has been very good to me. So my question is, and we had a discussion on this issue earlier at another council meeting, but relating to how do we decide what motions go in the consent agenda. And today's question is, was prompted by the fact that we have two Integrity Commissioner reports, which are quite extensive, and they're buried in council correspondence. Yet a few weeks ago, we had a couple of reports, and they were on the discussion agenda, I believe, or at least one of them was, and we spent quite a bit of time discussing them. And as I said, these reports are quite extensive, and I'm sure they were quite expensive as well. So I just wanted to ask the question as to, how do we, is there a rule in terms of some Integrity Commissioner reports go into discussion and some don't, or is it just subjective in terms of what staff feels should be or not?
Thank you, Councillor Garcia.
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a good question, Councillor Garcia. The Integrity Commissioner reports that have no, there's no issues with them, that they have not contravened any of the code of conduct, always have been in our consent reports. The only time the Integrity Commissioner comes before council is when there's a contravention of the code of conduct or the MCIA.
Thank you for that, but I could be wrong, but I thought we had one of the two reports we had recently that was in the regular agenda did not involve a contravention or did not find any contravention. Is that not correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's correct, Councillor Garcia. However, because Mr. Mascaron was here, I did have a talk with him about that. He said because he was here, he reviewed it quickly, but he would normally never come to a council if there was no contravention.
Okay, thank you for that.
All right, any other, Councillor Townsend?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to pull and endorse 6.94, the resolution from the Niagara region, the Russian sanction request.
Okay, so it'll be a pull and endorse, or we'll do it as the consent. Endorsed into the minutes. Okay. Yeah, let's do the consent vote first. So mover to approve the consent, Councillor Sorrento, seconded by Councillor Phillips. And I'll ask the clerk to do the roll call.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this evening's consent agenda for the public: 6.1, food trucks and mobile vending carts on city-owned parks or facilities; 6.2, cooling and warming centers; 6.3, P18 181-1, St. Catharines Museum HVAC replacement; 6.4, Budget Standing Committee Report, meeting of May 25th, 2022; 6.5, 2023 Schedule of Rates and Fees, will set public meeting for June 27th; 6.6, 2022 Community Benefits Charge Strategy, will set public meeting for June 27th; 6.7, Enbridge Gas Franchise Agreement; 6.8, 2021 Annual Report of the Integrity Commissioner; and 6.9 is council correspondence, in which we will definitely endorse your motion, Councillor Townsend. Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Well, I'm going to take this opportunity, since I've been around for your whole 11 years, Bonnie, to just express my appreciation for your professionalism the sage advice that you've given me over the years. And when life has dealt my family and me a couple difficult times in the last couple of years, when my mother died and when Melody had her injury, you were a very sympathetic ear and a great listener, and it meant a lot to me and still does. So that's what I will remember you for most of all. Thank you. And
Thank
yes.
you. Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
I'll just follow that and say as a congratulations, Bonnie, on retiring. And as a new councillor here, it's you've been very helpful, even as a new councillor who sometimes doesn't know the procedural stuff. You've been very kind and patient and incredibly helpful. And I wish you nothing but a wonderful retirement and lots of travels, including a trip to Boston, hopefully. But congratulations, and appreciate everything you do.
Thank you.
My vote is yes.
Thank you. Councillor Sorrento.
Yes, and you guys are killing me. I'll take the moment now, Mr. Mayor, to just say a couple of words. It's been an honor and a privilege working with you, and we have a little bit of a history in terms of our work together here at the city. Not only are you an outstanding colleague and a professional, but you are a beautiful person. I had the opportunity to speak with you about a few things. There have been a few of us that on a couple of occasions had to get together. I have the utmost respect for you, not only as a colleague, but as a person, and I love you as a person. So I wish you the very, very best. You know, we had a similar talk in your office. We've been through a lot in the last 8 years, a bunch of us. So you're just amazing, and all the very best. And you got a great chapter moving ahead, and you're the sister I never had. So
Thank you.
I love you.
You said yes, right? Thanks.
Yeah, yes, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Garcia.
Yes, and I will repeat what I said earlier. Thank you very much for everything you've done for me to help me.
You're welcome. Councillor Harris.
I'm going to say yes. I'm just going to say you are an awesome human being. I don't want you to retire. I want you to run for mayor. How's that?
Thanks for your confidence. Councillor Kushner.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, although I have some municipal experience, still, it's always good to get a very objective opinion, which I've always had, and I've always had it with good laughs. And more recently, chairing the Vicious Dog Act, the Animal Control Act, we've had a lot of laughs, and you've been very helpful in bringing humor to that task when we need it, and to get away unscathed. Thank you.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes?
Councillor McPherson.
I will say yes, but I'd like to add that as the newest person around this table and having known you for quite some time in other capacities, you are always a laugh. And that makes having conversations with you the best kind of conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Before I say yes, Bonnie, I just want to say what an incredible job you've done. You have made St. Catharines a better place to live. Thanks for coming from Thunder Bay and ending up here. Working with council and with your expertise, sometimes I know it's like trying to herd cats, but you always seem to get us in the right direction. And sometimes we make mistakes and you have to step on our toes, but you've never ruined the shine. So thank you very much for everything you've done, and have a wonderful retirement. You enjoy every minute of it, and you've been a great friend.
Thank you, Bill. I'm sorry, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Porter.
I'm going to get this out of the way. I can't imagine the chamber without you. You've got great staff that you've encouraged, and I know they'll do a great job. You've been such a wonderful support. You're so smart. You're so wise. Sometimes we've been a real motley crew, and somehow you wrangled us, and we ended up making some very good decisions in this term of council that we can all be proud of. It. We couldn't have done it without you. So I can't imagine you not sitting there. So thank you for your friendship and for your wisdom and your advice, and I don't know what else to say.
Thank you, Carrie.
And yes.
Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried unanimously.
All right. Before we move on, I just do, and I appreciate Councillor Garcia asking the question he asked about the consent reports, because they're the consent report and I didn't lift it. And when the Integrity Commissioner finds no wrongdoing, I think it sits on consent, and you allow the public to peruse it if they may be. But I just want to bring up this one because it does pertain to me, and just want to take a moment just to share the impact and sort of what happened. So, there was a integrity complaint against me. It was allegations of violation of the code of conduct, and that I was acting in collusion. Integrity is all that is the one thing we own individually. It's what we as individuals have. No one can pay you for it. No one can. Integrity is something that you have and you nurture, and you wanna do the best for your community or your business or your family. And so when your integrity gets attacked, you defend it. And so when you read headlines in online publications that say things like the mayor took part in collusion, violated the code, and you see that it's a representative of the NPCA who's our board member in St. Catharines who's making these allegations, and you're left wondering, why doesn't that individual just pick up the phone and call the mayor, have a conversation, instead of running to a online publication and casting aspersion on my character. And so it matters, because when I walk the 12 Mile Creek, I bump into people, and there's a person who's become a bit of a friend. His name's Darcy. He has a brown lab. And so he sees this stuff, and he asks about it. And so I explain my decisions to him as we're going for a walk. And that's only one person, but what this Integrity Commissioner report now shows is that my integrity is intact, fully and completely. Will I expect an apology from someone like our representative on the MPCA to say I was wrong? No, because that's what happens. You do a run-by character assassination on people, and there's no repercussions. But for me, and for councillors around this table, it's an attack on our integrity. So we defend it. So I just want to say thank you to the Integrity Commissioner for its decision, but its decision was founded in facts. And the more we deal with facts, the less we're going to have to deal with people who just figure that they can just take shots at any of us, who stand for something, who put our name on a ballot. And I would challenge all the people who take Integrity Commissioner complaints against us, put your name on the ballot. Sit in our seats. Make some tough decisions and see what happens from there. Because until you put your name on a ballot, and everyone around this table has done it, some have done it for a long time, and they all have integrity. But until people start to put their names on ballots and stand for something, we're going to continue to have these integrity reports that come after us, and we're going to continue to have headlines that, the mayor has took part in collusion. That's unacceptable. And I hope for people in our community who like to use the word integrity a lot, I hope they really take notice of these decisions and maybe start to judge themselves and say, maybe I'll make a better decision next time. So with that, I want to thank our council for the work that they're doing, because integrity is something that we all have. And I know every member of this council has the utmost respect for each other and also for their own integrity. And you stand for something, and that's important. So with that, I'm going to move on to, we have a couple of presentations, I believe. We have a public meeting coming up. So council chambers in all municipalities in our country represent the seat of local democracy. The many acts that govern us understand the necessity of the collective voice when decisions are being made to grow our spaces, pass our bylaws, and to seek opinions into complex issues. We recognize the right of the majority to decide, the minority to be heard, and the public to have an opportunity to participate, and all participants to be treated with courtesy and respect. It is imperative that elected officials, citizens, and staff have input, and it is paramount that we listen to one another and question one another, but we understand that we do this in a way that never undermines any person's abilities or their dignities in our chambers. So we do have a public meeting related to what we had moved at the last meeting of council, was for a public meeting to be held on the city's new waste bylaw and long grass and weeds bylaw. Councillor Kushner, you were asking about that at the last meeting because there's a lot of issues in different parts of our community. So it's a public meeting. People were provided with the opportunity to submit written correspondence or to come in and delegate electronically. No one has requested to speak as well. We're going to have a manager of bylaw enforcement, Paul Chibota, who will speak to the report ever so briefly. We'll close the public meeting, and then we'll have the council motion on the floor, and then at that point, councillors can ask some questions. So I'll turn it over now to Mr. Chibota, manager of bylaw enforcement. I think this is the first time Paul, Manager Chibota, speaking to us, so I want to say welcome, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, the chair, good evening, Mayor Senzik, councillors and members of the public. The report being brought forward to council tonight is another piece towards a modernization and enhancement of how bylaw enforcement is conducted in the city. These administrative penalties provide additional leverage for our bylaw officers to obtain compliance, especially with problematic properties and frequent flyers. This progressive penalty system is primarily intended on addressing repeat offenders, and a penalty notice can be issued in addition to in order to comply on a repeat occurrence. We have seen an escalation in the amount of complaints received for these concerns, and administrative penalties are another component of expediting compliance based on a cost-benefit evaluation, which should generate voluntary compliance. As of last week, bylaw enforcement officers have been deployed with equipment to issue orders that comply in the field, which will assist with a timely and consistent service for these matters, including the ability for our bylaw officers to issue a penalty notice on site to a non-compliant property owner. The service of these orders coupled with these administrative penalties will cut down the timelines for compliance and assist us with addressing complaints from the public overall. Thank you, Your Worship.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chidoba. I think I was referencing one of your friends, Chibota, and so I apologize for mixing it up. My dyslexia comes up every once in a while. And Chidoba, nice to see you. And we don't have anybody speaking from the public, so we can close the public meeting, and then we'll have the council questions. Motion to close the public meeting, Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor Townsend. All in favor of closing the public meeting? That's carried. And now we'll have the motion on the floor, and we'll start with questions. We got Councillor Phillips, Councillor Kushner, you have a question? Councillor Phillips, Councillor Kushner, Councillor Townsend.
Thanks for your presentation, Paul. You mentioned that the timelines are going to be shortened significantly, which is great because it was almost, well, it was over 2 weeks from the time they got the notice until they actually had to get their lawn cut. When you talk about the timelines being shortened, how have they been shortened? What is the expected time from the time a bylaw enforcement officer gets there until we tell them they have to have their lawn mowed?
Through the chair to the councillor, thank you for the question. So as it currently stands, an order to comply would be issued for 7 days. Now, if it was done on, let's say, a Thursday, by the time it went to administrative staff and then a weekend got involved, it could potentially be 9 or 10 days before that, or at least, 3 or 4 days before that order could actually be issued. As we are now taking care of this on site, an order is deemed served when we post it to property, but we do serve if we don't engage a property owner we send by registered mail and provide a period of time for them as a grace period to ensure that they receive the order. So that way we can get voluntary compliance out of that. So that's one example.
What is the grace period? How long?
Through the chair to the councillor, so we provide 5 days, and that's parallel with the building, the Ontario Building Code Act, which provides service for 5 days. So we use that as a measure. So potentially 12 days if we do not serve a person or a property owner specifically.
Well, that's still a long time. Grass grows fast, but hopefully we can get it done before then. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Kushner and Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is quite similar. With respect to snow removal, we give the owner of the property a few days, and in this case, we give weeks. And why are we not modeling this after snow removal?
Through the chair to the councillor, so there are a few things that need to be brought into consideration. If you mention snow removal, it's fairly simple. Bring out a shovel and remove the snow. Now with grass, it does happen that yes, the grass will grow, the sun will shine and the rain will come, and it will happen year over year, and that's a guarantee. But at this time, it's also the scope that we deal with. When we deal with matters of non-compliance, a person may have an extenuating circumstance. There might be a mechanical breakdown of somebody's lawnmower, or that somebody was supposed to take care of it for them is unavailable. So a little more complex. When we get into waste removal, now things become even more challenging, because it isn't as simple as, well, it's more than 20 centimeters in height. We're not talking about what is refuse, what do we deem to be waste and debris, and there are also other challenges that come along with these circumstances, that some persons may not wish to depart with these things which are deemed refuse, but for their course are not. So we have to work with the public as well when it comes to these circumstances, and these timelines provided do allow for that to happen. I will also reiterate that these timelines are the finite for non-compliance. So this is the point where we've done all that we can to try and resolve the matter, and now those attempts have failed, and now we're expecting to take the next course of action.
Okay, my second question is with respect to areas where you have perhaps out-of-town ownership, and these are recurring, these are repetitive violations, and I gather we look at the properties on a complaint basis, but if we have these areas, why would the inspector not go down the street and give them all a warning?
So through the chair to the councillor, if we're dealing with the out-of-town property owners, our process is still the same, where we're going to send registered mail if we don't deal with the property owner directly, or if we have to post the property. So that's the one component. The second thing that's been brought up in terms of, well, going down the street. Operationally, that could be something very challenging. Now, I don't disagree that we want all the members of the public to maintain a minimum standard in the municipality, but just alone with the service increase that we've received for these types of calls, grass, weeds, and waste alone, operationally could be very crippling.
But my response to that would be, I understand we have a problem with staff being inundated at certain times, but can we not hire a student during the summer and put that responsibility on that employee?
So through the chair to the councillor, it's a staffing issue that I can bring back to Director Kate and upwards to the Deputy CEO and CEO.
Okay, well, I would certainly appreciate that, because it appears that as councillors we get repetitive complaints about the same property, and the word on the street is they wait until the notification date and then they cut the lawn. and they do the lawn only a few times a year. So I'd appreciate you referring that to staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Townsend, and then Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Yeah, Councillor Sorrento and I certainly do receive a lot of phone calls from properties that aren't maintained within our ward. And I know the CAO does expect that yearly call for my properties, and I do appreciate his support in doing so. My concern here, or my question here is, I guess through you to Mr. Chidova, are there any other municipalities in Ontario who do a grace period of less than 5 days?
Through the chair to the councillor, I have not done a full extensive report in relation to timelines of compliance for that. So my response to that, based on the experience that I have in previous municipality experience, that there are other municipalities that do provide a lesser timeline than 7 days.
Okay, thank you for that. And my concern here is essentially that these penalties are not high enough. And I guess with this, if someone gets a $250 fine, a penalty, does that include their grass being cut, or does the Director of Municipal Works additionally bill the property owner for if the city does need to step in and cut the grass?
Through the chair to the councillor. So if we look at the way the penalty structure is constructed, these penalties could potentially be a daily amount. So when we deal with a first occurrence and you have a 250 and they didn't get the hint and we have to reattend for a 500, once we get up to 750, we are now at a position where that is the penalty for potentially every day that the offense continues. So with that has a built-in deterrent for the repeat offenders.
Okay, and thank you for that. So additionally, though, would the property owner have to pay for the grass being cut through our Municipal Works Department?
I saw Director Smith come up, and if you want to just give a brief there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So under our current rates and fees, if we do respond to cut of grass, they are charged back for that cost. It's for the most part a set fee. I don't think the AMPS approach takes that option of the rates and fees.
Okay, thank you for that, Director Smith. My concern here is, again, we've been dealing with this year after year, where the property owner doesn't cut the grass for months, and it looks terrible, and the city ends up stepping in. They get slapped with a very small fine, and the city just cuts the grass for them cheaper than what they would pay, say, bringing in a contractor. I ideally would like to, and I hope that council would support increasing these penalties to, say, a 500, a 750, and 1,000 between column 3, 4, and 5. But I'm just, when would I make that amendment and put that on the floor?
Okay, we can hold that as a consideration. We'll go through the remainder of the questions of council, and that'll allow Director Kitse to also work with her staff to figure out the mechanics of if an increase is applicable here today. So I'm going to go now to Councillor Garcia. Just hold that, Councillor Townsend. Go to Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Chidova, and as the mayor stated at the beginning, we're dealing with a lot of complaints here, and as Councilor Phillips stated, this process can take quite a while. So based on your answers, it looks like the process has to remain the same, but if you can please explain for us and for the public what the administrative monetary penalty system will do. Right now, when we go through all that process, if somebody doesn't pay, does that mean we have to take him to court as opposed to now being able to slap a fine on them immediately?
So through the chair to the councillor, the administrative penalty system for one, actually allows us to put right to property tax after they do not pay. Additionally, the AMPS system keeps us out of the provincial offense process. The provincial offense courts, as we know, are now even more congested. So potentially we could have an offender that would be waiting up to 18 months for if we prosecuted them under the Provincial Offence Act for laying a charge for failing to comply with one of our orders, which in itself then the fine would be a maximum penalty of $5,000. So going back to the AMP system, that if we have these problematic properties, we can escalate their level of monetary penalty significantly in order to obtain compliance. And as I reiterate, this could potentially be a daily penalty where those amounts would significantly add up to the point where it would no longer be to a benefit for the city to be the landscape service, so to speak, of some of these problematic properties, as the councillor just identified recently.
Thank you for that, and that's what I thought, but I'm still concerned about the length of time the process takes before we get there. And anything, back to what Councillor Townsend said, anything that we can do, whether it's higher penalties or what, to make that happen faster, I would strongly support. As you know, I complain about the property 104 Lakeport, which is such a highly visible property, and it looks like a jungle. Like the grass has to go up above your knees at this time, and it's been weeks and weeks of complaining. But anyway, I'll wait until we get to the motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Garcia. Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'm trying to understand some of my colleagues' concerns, because when I read this report, it actually fixes so many bylaw problems. And the fact that we didn't have administrative and monetary penalties for a lot of our bylaw enforcement issues has led to the reasons why there were so many delays. So I'm not sure if our city solicitor is on the line. How many times did we have to go to provincial offences court over something like long grass? And what were all the steps necessary to get to provincial offences court? And what happens to the money when something goes to provincial offences court? Do we get to set the fine? Does it come back to the municipality?
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, from my recollection, in the past couple of years, I would say we had about 3 to 5 of cases that we took to provincial offences court that had to do with the grass bylaw. And to answer your question, we get a very small percentage of the fine amount. And if you want me to walk you through the process, so we would gather the evidence, and then with the help of the Bylaw Enforcement Division, we would lay charges through information and summonses. We would serve the homeowners with the summonses, with court appearances, and we would provide disclosure, the evidence that would be used if the matter went to trial. And if the defendants or the accused wish to settle the case, that would be a factor that a prosecutor would have to consider for a lesser fine. But if the defendants or the accused decided to take it to trial, it could, like Mr. Chidoba said, it could take up to 18 months. And then we would look at a higher fine, but never the maximum fine for first or second offenders.
And so this requires resources from the legal department to see its way through, and probably required the bylaw enforcement officers to have all this due diligence in terms of collecting a lot of evidence, because it was actually going to a court. Is that correct?
Through Your Worship, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to thank Mr. Chidoba for this work, and I believe we were behind other municipalities because we didn't have a lot of administrative and monetary penalties. And I think this is going to be revolutionary for some of the issues we've been facing. I think the fines are fine, especially if bylaw enforcement officers are able to go back on a daily basis and immediately slap on fines every single day. I don't see what the issue is or why we would need to even touch this at this moment. And I guess my next question, I work in housing and on occasion have had to support the other side, people who get these types of complaints and notices from bylaw enforcement officers. Do you allow some discretion with your bylaw enforcement officers for extenuating circumstances? In my experience, they've always been very good and understanding, and they try and look for somebody who seems to be taking steps towards compliance before proceeding. So what kind of leeway do they have?
Through the chair to the councillor, these are special circumstances that arise also do allow for discretion. But we also have to take a balance between the needs of a property owner that we're dealing with. But we also have to balance the needs of the complainant and a person that's identified that this is problematic and affecting their quality of life as well. So with that, we do try and find the best balance possible in order to ultimately bring these properties into compliance. Primarily, we deal with property owners, not so much the tenants, as ultimately we would just go back to the property owner as it's their responsibility, unless there's a tenant agreement, so to speak.
Okay, would you provide a copy to a tenant if you were sending something by registered mail? Do you also provide a copy to the tenant if it's clear it's probably the tenant causing the issue?
Through the chair to the councillor, we do, just in the matter of us posting to property. But if we do serve not a property owner, but a tenant, we do require it be sent by registered mail to our last known address for the property owner, so that we can ensure that they accept responsibility as well, or at the very least are notified that there's a problem occurring at their property.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to thank you for your work and also to our acting city solicitor for churning out these initiatives and administrative and monetary penalties, because it's going to make our job easier as councillors, because I really do believe we're going to get compliance a lot more quickly with all the issues we've been facing. And Mr. Chibota, I think you were in here with the suit on and I didn't recognize you because I'm used to seeing you out without, and I'm sorry. So thanks for your presentation.
Thank you, Councillor. I got Councillor Harris and Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's excellent what's been done. I'm just a little confused. Can you go back and explain why snow removal is different than tall grass? Like the process?
Through the chair to the councillor, I was specifically referring to tools required in order to affect the repairs. Basically, a lawnmower requires certain things such as gas and mechanical moving parts, and so to speak, whereas a snow shovel is fairly simplistic, so to speak.
Okay, I think this report, the biggest issue in the south end are absentee landlords in tall grass. And you mentioned something about other municipalities have a shorter time frame and stuff. I would be a little more comfortable if you came back and actually showed us what the other municipalities do and how they can enforce this, because the only time people tend to change behaviors when they feel pain, and the best pain is getting large fines. But ultimately, it would be ideal if we could address tall grass more timely and put in a similar kind of process as the snow removal. So right now with snow removal, it works on a complaint basis, or staff sometimes go around and actually flag homes?
Through the chair, I'd have to defer to Works for that, as that's mostly under their purview.
Okay, Works.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, two things. Just one of the issues with snow removal, and one of the reasons why it's done more quickly than long grass, is the slip and fall risk that this municipality bears when the snow is not removed. So the way that the bylaw is written and under the minimum maintenance standards, there's more of a direct action, and that's why it's a quicker turnaround with respect. One of the reasons it's a quicker turnaround with respect to the snow removal. And I'm sorry, I wanted to say that, and I missed the second part of your question, Councilor Harris. So if you could repeat it, please.
Well, it was just, how can we make it similar to snow removal, and do staff, is that a complaint driven thing, or do sometimes staff
yes,
identify certain properties?
So through you, Mr. Chair, there are some frequent flyers of long sections of property that we have in the city. And again, because of the risk, we will sometimes take, once we can free the staff, we will sometimes take staff after the main response to a snow event and actually send them out to check some sidewalks, again, because of the risk factor.
So when you say frequent flyers, I think if you asked Councillor Kushner and most likely all the other councillors that have this problem, most likely they are frequent flyers. Is there a method that we could perhaps flag these people and then engage them sooner than later instead of waiting for a complaint?
Again, through you, and maybe this can go back to the manager of bylaw, it's a resource availability issue with respect to this. I believe the manager has already stated that he's going to take that discussion back to his director, the possibility of putting some more resources available to that.
So I guess since I actually spoke to this, perhaps we can send this back to staff to come back with the answers to those questions, and perhaps other municipalities that have a quicker response, and if we can have frequent flyers on a list, and then this come back to council. But I can't make that referral back to staff, so maybe the next speaker can. Just ask.
Director Kate.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to members of council. On page 2 of the staff report, the manager has provided a comparison of what the penalties are for our local Niagara comparators for AMPs for long grass and waste. What we have done, in addition to being within actually at the higher end of what those penalties have been, is actually being able to tier it. So if you look into Appendix 1 on the report, it explains how frequent flyers or repeat offenders would have a raising rate of how they would receive financial penalties. And as previously stated, this could be a daily thing. So at this point, I'm not sure that increasing the values of the fines is entirely necessary. We've put forward our best recommendation at this time. With regards to...
Oh, sorry. That wasn't what I was asking about, the increased fines. It was about identifying frequent flyers, not on a complaint driven, but have a list. You know what I mean? And then the other point, the manager stated that there's other municipalities that have a quicker time frame or whatever, and I just wanted to see that information. So it wasn't actually about I just wanted to know if there's a method, not complaint driven, but if there's typical these same properties, just like snow removal, that are constant, have these issues, we could identify them and be proactive. And I think that's what Councillor Kushner and Townsend and everybody is kind of talking about. I think it's a great thing. We might as well do it once and get as much in this at the very beginning.
Thank you. And through the mayor to the councillor as well, I think it's first and foremost a principle of bylaw enforcement is not to penalize, but to gain voluntary compliance. So when we're talking about snow removal, which comes with risk and liability to the municipality, as well as risk to slip and falls and personal safety, it is going to have a tighter turnaround than something like long grass and weeds. However, we still do have to provide an adequate amount of time for somebody to turn around and conduct compliance. So currently, when we're recommending through this process that it be 5 to 7 days, that's more than reasonable, and it's also within a time frame that would be reasonable for somebody to undertake a long grass cut should they be should they be warned, versus someone who would come back 5-7 days later and it hasn't been done. Then we can start with our tiered penalty approach as provided in the bylaw. But given that we are in our summer period, which is our busiest time for long grass and weeds, I don't suggest that a deferral at this time would be helpful to our efforts in cleaning up the community.
Okay, good point. Can we agree that if we can identify problematic properties, that perhaps we can be proactive and do drive-bys? Would that be a stretch? Or can we actually, because I guarantee you they're going to be the same properties.
Through the mayor to the councillor, I think what would be best is to actually go through a season of doing this, and then we can do an Amanda report at the end of the year to see if we continue to receive complaints on the same properties, and then come back in the following year, perhaps with a different direction in how we administer this process. But I don't think that needs to be done at this time.
Okay, thank you, councillor.
So what would that, I was just going to ask, what would that look like? You're going to actually provide us with a report, and can you actually cross-reference it with previous years if they've actually been the same properties?
I think what the discussion there is that the Amanda report will be able to see what repeat offenders, if any, are presenting this season coming forward, and then adjust it accordingly. There may not be any repeat offenders. This may be enough to deter what you're seeing. So I think it's a good compromise to have this come back next year after one full year. The longer we wait, we're already in June. The longer we wait, we're gonna run out of runway.
Okay.
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Chidoba. In terms of property owners who want to naturalize plant pollinators and maybe ornamental grasses, etc., is it a discretionary call on your part in that regard, or I just wondered if you've encountered those issues?
Through the chair to the councillor, we don't specify the type of species of grass that persons would have. Kentucky bluegrass is what might be necessary. We go for the more blanket term of the 20 centimeters for all grasses and weeds. We also have to keep in mind that persons can't have noxious weeds on their property. The province identifies 25 specific noxious weeds that are prohibited on a person's property as well, that would have to be eradicated in addition to maintaining a person's property.
Right, and most of the time there's a clear delineation between grass that's just gone to seed, overgrown and gone wild, versus people who maintain a naturalized section or all of their property. And just a comment, we did receive a correspondence from a person who's, makes the point that this really puts more onus on the city to maintain our public lands, boulevards, cul-de-sacs, etc. If we're going to be, if we're going to preach what or practice what we preach, I should say. And also, long grass can occasionally also be a safety issue. There was a case reported to me, in fact, just yesterday on Bala Place, where the grass is growing very tall, and a little girl, I think on a tricycle or a small bike, got away from her father and almost got in a car accident because the vehicle came onto the circle at a fast rate of speed and had to stop quickly. So anyway, that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, seeing no other further question, we got the motion on the floor. Councillor Kushner's making the motion, seconded by Councillor Phillips.
Mr. Mayor, could we ask if a review is going to take place, that we have the review in our hands by the end of the Q1 next year, so we can get this in place for the growing season rather than the end of June?
Okay, I'm getting a nod. So could we just have an amendment that, in addition to this motion being approved, that a report be prepared for by the end of first quarter 2023 to review the application of this new bylaw?
Thank you.
Good follow-up. Councillor Kushner?
I think it's a great step forward. We're sending a message to the landowners who are not taking care of their property, and that, yes, we want to be educational, but at the same time, If that fails, we have to be punitive, and I think this does both. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no other further hands up, Councillor Williamson, is your hand still up from last time, or you want to? Okay, so I'll look to the clerk to call the question.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
A hearty yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes, and I want to second it.
Already seconded by Councillor Phillips. We need two different wards involved here.
Councillor
No.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
And Mayor Senzik.
Yes.
Carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you, Councillor, for that. Then the staff recommendation has been approved, and we move on now to the financial management services. This is related to approving the report that'll set a public meeting for June 27th. It's a very specific piece around parking related to municipal special event parking. I'm going to call on Manager of Revenue, Ms. Lisa Reed. She will provide a short PowerPoint, and it's not for discussion tonight. It's just for consideration to review, and then the questions will be at the next meeting of council. That's when the public meeting will be held. Over to Ms. Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to just take a quick opportunity to wish Bonnie well in her retirement, and just to let you know that it's been a real pleasure to work with you. I wish you all the best and all the good things to come. In my time working with you, I've always knew that I could depend on your willingness to help me and all your insight. So congratulations on your retirement and on your many more adventures to come. So
Thank you.
Happy retirement to you. So, good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors, citizens, and senior staff. The Niagara region has long been a destination for tourism, and with the realization of the culture cluster in downtown St. Catharines, including the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre, the Meridian Centre, and the Marilyn I. Walker School for Fine and Performing Arts, St. Catharines is a destination for arts and entertainment. Next slide, please. As a result of the large-scale events happening during the period between June 30th and July the 3rd, the city will see a significant number of visitors to the downtown core. When assessing the potential impacts of these events on the parking system and considering one of the key objectives of parking operations is to manage parking demands and meet the parking users' need, staff felt it was an opportunity to reevaluate the parking event program. To support the upcoming large events with the current resources at the city's disposal, it is recommended that the following changes be made to the special events program. Currently, only events occurring at the Meridian Centre and the PAC are subjected to the SAP rate, and staff are recommending that we include events at Montebello Park be subject to the special event parking fee also. We are also recommending that the parking fee be charged at any lot managed, owned, or under contract by the city. The minimum fee be set at $5 during the special events, and that the Director of Financial Management Services be delegated authority to facilitate a dynamic pricing model for special events to a maximum of $20. Next slide, please. With the opening of the Meridian Centre and the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre, there has been an opportunity to charge for parking for major special events in downtown to help ensure long-term financial sustainability of the parking system. At the meeting of September the 8th, 2014, Council approved the special event parking fee for events of municipal significance at $5 for evening and weekend special events for patrons entering the garages. The special event parking fee was then added to some parking lots within the downtown core at the meeting of September the 28th, 2015. The special event parking fee is currently $5, with the exception of the David S. House lot, which is adjacent to the Meridian Centre, which is $10. Staff are proposing no changes to the minimum $5 fee, but feel that there is merit in introducing a dynamic pricing model based on both the proximity of the lot and the venue, which is what is currently occurring at the David S. House lot, and the estimated number of attendees to the event, or when multiple events with significant number of attendees are occurring on the same date. Next slide, please. Coming June 30th to July 3rd to St. Catharines is Live Nation's Born and Raised, which is the first in a series of in-person events coming this summer. In conjunction with this event, the Meridian Center will host Cirque du Soleil Crystal over the same weekend. With the resurgence of these types of community gatherings, it will facilitate our community's economic and social recovery, kickstart the revival of live arts industry, employ artists and art workers, provide a boost to consumer confidence as it relates to arts attendance, and strengthen community pride. Considering these exciting events coming to downtown St. Catharines, and the special event parking program has not been reviewed since 2015, staff felt it was an opportunity to update the special event program. There are existing internal current procedures which include when special event parking will come into effect, which lots will be utilized for these events. The procedure will be updated to reflect the dynamic pricing model. The events at the end of June, beginning July, would be the first large-scale event that dynamic pricing model would apply. This would provide staff with the opportunity to learn from the event, any challenges, and make changes for any future events. Next slide, please. Charging for parking can be an influential tool to influence travelers' decisions about whether to drive alone, carpool, use public transit, or other modes of transportation. However, the influence of parking fees on travel demand is also contingent on charging a fee to commiserate with the scale of the event. Reducing the number of vehicles, especially single occupancy vehicles, traveling to events in keeping with several city mandates, including reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, encouraging the use of active modes of transportation, encouraging the public to use transit, and encouraging an active lifestyle. There is a finite number of parking spaces in the downtown, and depending on the scale of the event, it is possible that that demand for parking may exceed the supply. Reducing the demand for parking can alleviate congestion and improve access in the downtown as patrons drive around seeking parking options. Charging for parking during special events will also provide an opportunity for the city to generate revenue. Next slide, please. While there'll be options for public transit and off-site parking, it's still expected that many attendees will still opt to travel by car into the downtown area. Parking will need to be accommodated in the more immediate area of the venue, and if there are available city lots in close proximity, it presents some revenue-generating opportunities. Currently, only the Carlisle Street Garage, the Ontario Street Garage, the Garden Park lot, Head Street, Ray Street, and David S. House are subjected to the special event parking fee. Staff are of the opinion there is merit to expand these to other lots in the surrounding area. Number of lots that could be subjected to the special events parking fee, especially if it was applied for events at Montebello Park. As such, staff are proposing that the fee also be charged at the Raymond Street lot, the Riordan Street parking lot, the William Street lot, Garden City complex, the Market Square parking lot, the library parking lot, and any other lot that might be managed, owned, or under contract by the city. Under the concept of dynamic pricing, charging a fee for these additional lots would be based on the location and scale of the event. Next slide, please. Shared mobility is one of the most environmentally friendly transit alternatives. The three most prominent events of using public transit over single occupancy vehicles include the reduction of carbon emissions, air pollution, and congestion on the road, including traffic. These events in the downtown represent additional revenue opportunities which will contribute to long-term financial stability of the downtown parking system. Special event parking revenues also support the St. Catharines Cultural Investment Program, SKIP. The support has been significantly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and the expansion of these lots subjected to special event parking provides the opportunity to provide additional funds for SCIP. No change in charge to the standard homegrown events such as Niagara Ice Dogs, Niagara River Lions Games, or any events at the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre that currently occur. On Monday, June the 27th, there will be a public meeting where council and the public will have an opportunity to ask any questions and provide input to these proposed changes prior to council's deliberation. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Manager Reid. Did an outstanding job, so there is no questions of council. This is for information to be prepared for the public meeting. If you do have questions as councillors, you can follow up over the next 2 weeks with the Manager Reid, as well as any other staff that may be able to answer your questions. So with that...
Just a procedural question, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, what's the procedural question?
I understand no questions now, but just to Ms. Reid, great presentation. Will this report be available for the next council meeting as well, since the public doesn't get to participate today, so that they can see this when there is a public meeting?
So to Ms. Reid?
Yes, is the council report not on the agenda this evening?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
I'm saying,
Yeah.
will it be there?
Yes, it will be there the next council meeting, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, definitely, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, we don't need a motion. Not, it's, it will go to a vote. Councillor Littleton.
Thank you. When I read it, I didn't see that it's in specific buildings. Is this just region-wide? Is that
So it's
the idea?
region-wide, and it's looking at restaurants that have the Waterpipe as part of their service that they provide, and it's treating it like you would treat tobacco or marijuana or any kind of other substance that is then expelled into the local air. So it's a regulatory issue related to that matter.
Okay, so should it say that in our wording? Because when I read it, I thought it meant just anywhere in the region.
Okay, I'll look to the clerk in terms of the bylaw itself, and does it need to be regulated or referenced anywhere?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is what was sent to us by the region. It's not our motion, and they asked us to do this. I mean, if you want to add something, I think we can actually give them some direction. Oh, okay, the bylaw itself is Appendix 1.
Okay, so this is a good time to say how good you are at your job and how much I'm going to miss you. But, okay, so I apologize because I usually see everything in the agenda. So maybe just, can we put that in there as provided in Appendix 1? Just something about that? Thank you.
It is a very specific thing. The word water pipe and Niagara region does create some misleading information. So it is specific to restaurants. Seeing no other further question, I'll call the question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Harris.
Yes, and we need a seconder.
I believe, yes, we do.
Seconded
Maybe
by...
Phillips. Yeah.
Councillor
Kushner seconded.
Okay, Councillor Kushner. Okay, Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Senzik.
Yes.
Carried unanimously.
The next one is 10.3, which is being brought forward by Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Kushner. It's relating to the Alcohol and Gaming Commission. There is a local brew company, Decew Falls Brewing, that has invested significantly here in the city of St. Catharines. They're looking for a by-the-glass manufacturing limited liquor sales license, which is required in order to go to the AGCO for approval. So they want to be open for the July long weekend. That's why it's in front of us here today, so that they can get it in front of the AGCO for hopefully an approval by the end of June. So is there any question on this motion? We did one last week for Hernder by the Glass, or 2 weeks ago for Hernder by the Glass, so it is quite similar. Thank you to Councillor Harris and Councillor Kushner for bringing this forward. And all in favor? Show of hands. Carried. Thank you. We do have the committee task force minutes, and that council receive and file the minutes of the advisory committee of a council, and need a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Garcia. Any questions on those? Not seeing any hands go up. All in favor? That's carried. And
sorry, can I just quick point of order here?
Yep.
Maybe more of a point of clarification, because I want to make it clear that I think Bonnie Nistico Dunk is an amazing city clerk. And I think being a city clerk is one of those jobs where probably the less you're in the spotlight, the better. And you've been very good at setting us up for success. I know all the work that goes into that behind the scenes. And obviously, despite that, we've managed to twist ourselves into some knots and get mired in some quagmires and overuse some metaphors and things like that. You've always, I think, set us straight again, and you're very, with a lot of gentleness and I think a lot of genius as well to help get us through some of these meetings that we have. So I think now that, I think it's a shame that you haven't been in the spotlight, because as has been noted, you're very witty and very funny and very fun. So I hope now that you take this time you have to grab some of that spotlight, maybe a podcast, which is something people do, or some stand-up comedy, maybe joining Councillor Townsend and I on the karaoke stage sometime. And just on a personal note, thank you for putting up with my frequent use and sometimes abuse of these points of order and points of clarification. So what is clear is that from tonight and everything everyone said is that you've touched everyone who's had the privilege to work with you. So, and then I'm certainly one of them. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Well said. Okay, so we had the minutes that have been approved. We do now have a couple of in-camera items, and so the clerk is just going to read the in-camera, why we're going into in-camera. After in-camera, so there's two items. After in-camera, we really just have the bylaws. So I think everyone's had an opportunity to say something to the clerk publicly, and I greatly appreciate that. If there's anyone else that would like to say anything, if not, we're going to do Councillor Dodge, you just went off mute.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I hadn't had a chance to express my best wishes to Bonnie and to thank her for all the help that she's been and some of the, wacky questions that I've had to deal with. And she's certainly been a great resource to myself as well as the rest of council. And I couldn't agree more with what everyone else has said. And I wish her all the best. And I hope she looked up the lady in the red beret that I was telling her about and see if she was seeing the same thing that I saw. So best wishes in her travels and all her future endeavors. And thank you very much for all your help that you've been to me. I really, really appreciated it. And thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dodge. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Dodge. So to the clerk, we're going to go in camera for the following reasons.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're going in camera this evening for a property matter, Lease, 17 Beech Street, Realty file number 14305, and we are going for the proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. And we have a second matter, 2021 performance evaluation for the CAO, pursuant to the bylaw, Section B, personal matter about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees and labor relations or employee negotiations. By attending the closed session, each member acknowledges that their obligations under the Code of Conduct, including responsibilities related to the confidentiality of closed session materials and discussions, remain the same as if they were physically present at the meeting. This includes that members are not permitted to record the proceedings and must ensure that no other person can see or hear any of the confidential deliberations taking place this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. I need a mover to go and Councillor Townsend, seconded by Councillor McPherson. All in favor? That's carried. And so Evan will take us through the breakout room. All right, so we're back from the in-camera session. We have a couple of motions to approve. That council approve the, okay, it's just, I gotta start a closed session. Okay, gotta get to there. Financial management services, we have a motion just to receive the verbal update provided by staff. I've got Councillor Townsend, Councillor Sorrento, and that's a receipt for information, so vote of hands there. And that's all carried. The next one is moved by Councillor Kushner, seconded by Councillor Littleton, and that staff proceed as directed as related to the Office of the Mayor Administration 2021 performance evaluation. And I'll look to the clerk for a recorded vote on that.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Harris. Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, bylaws, reading of the bylaws. The bylaws presented on the council agenda A through K be read a first time, considered and passed. They be signed and executed by the mayor and city clerk. And I have a motion on this. Councillor Kushner, seconded by Councillor McPherson. Show of hands for the reading of the bylaws. And then we have the final act of the evening. Motion that there being no further items of business, this meeting be adjourned. I need a
Just
motion for this.
One more point of order for me.
Yep.
Is there notices of motion? I think a colleague had one.
Oh, sorry, I overlooked the notices of motion, and my apologies. As long as it doesn't require a report.
No, it just came in hot to you right now. It's a motion that I've discussed with staff. It's about asking that we also do a feasibility study in tandem with our conservation and energy demand management plan to look at the feasibility of various types of capital projects and apply for FCM funding to have the money to undertake the work, but utilize the work of the possibly the consultant that's doing the plan.
Okay, so you'll put that in writing and get it to the clerks for the next meeting?
Yeah, there's a draft.
Okay,
but
perfect.
There'll probably be an update to it. Thanks.
All right, I need a motion to adjourn the final meeting of the city clerk. Councillor Kushner, seconded by Councillor Littleton. All in favor of this final meeting of the city clerk? Carried. And I'm gonna bang it, just so you get, there you go, well done. Okay, that ends the live portion.